15 of the 16 HGC finals teams have been determined. All that's left is to find out who in NA punches that BlizzCon ticket. Gilly, Dread, and Glowering here for North America. Glow, Gale Esports taking on Tempo Storm to find out who goes to BlizzCon. We couldn't ask for a final playoffs match that could be better.
It's honestly so poetic in and of the fact that last year, to determine who went to BlizzCon, both Gale Force and Tempo played each other at the first fall regional to determine the first slot. So I think it's a little bit poetic that this year we get to see that same storyline.
Yeah, and at that time, Gale Force did get another chance, and a certain other team ended up beating them out for that, and then it ends up that you indeed are going to be going. So one of these teams will not get to go, but one gets to go on. And speaking of great matches, Dread, man, the end of Tempest versus Mighty, how about that match?
Oh my goodness. One of the best endings to a series I feel like you could ever ask for. Some of the highest level play coming out of HGC Korea. If you guys did not watch the end of that series and haven't ventured to the top of Reddit, I strongly suggest you do so, because the commentary, the play, everything about it was 10 out of 10.
Yeah, a lot of just yells all around. It was a great match to watch, so you got to check that one out. Also, the last match we had Team Wish versus Expert, really good. Congratulations to Expert, but we're ready for North America now. So as we take one last look at the NA playoffs bracket, you can see that Tempo Storm were able to defeat Space Station, who started out defeating Superstar. So Tempo Storm will take on Gale Force here. We've made it to Sunday. Whoever wins today will be going to the HGC finals at BlizzCon. And now we know that both of these teams, they have a lot to prove. Glowering, Tempo Storm, a team, our longest standing roster in North America, wants to prove that they can overcome all difficulties together.
Yeah, a good point you make about the longest standing roster is they've gone through like multiple times, I think, from my perspective as one of, like, I consider Caterpillar to be one of my best friends, so I get like some cool insight, but I haven't seen Tempo Storm this hungry to win in a long time. So it's pretty scary to think about.
Yeah, they've made so many changes, and it makes sense. You know, yesterday we talked about the fact that it's the first time that they haven't auto-qualified for an international event this entire year. So that has to make you very hungry. But at the other side of the table, we've got Gale Force Esports, who practically built a BlizzCon team, Dread.
Even having BlizzCon champions of old on that type of a roster, everything for Gale Force Esports, since honestly the formation of Gale Force Esports has been with the intent of just going to international and performing effectively. So to not make it to BlizzCon for a roster like this would be, I mean, a year's worth of work just absolutely gone out the window.
Well, it's time to get into it. Let's hear from Michael Udall and Koth and Luck about this final playoffs match.
Gale Force matchup is going to be a wild one. At this point, we're uncertain as to whether they're going to do the old GFE style of preparing very, very specific quote-unquote cheese strategies to try to win a set, or if they've been moving away from that into more solid standard play, which there has been some talk from some of their members about how they feel like they were relying too much on those cheesy specific strategies. But I think it should be clear after the first match or two whether they chose to go with the very specific strategies that are map dependent, or if they're trying to just beat us straight up. We're feeling pretty confident that whichever version of GFE we face, that we'll be able to adjust and play properly against it. As a team, to return to BlizzCon would be a huge achievement, because basically the kind of longevity we've seen with our team's success is something that's very rare in the Heroes scene. And normally when a team that's on top for a long time drops off, you see a slow, kind of steady fall, and then people lose motivation and it just kind of accelerates to the bottom. And I think this is our opportunity to show that we're not going to fall into that same pattern, and that everybody is really motivated to increase their effort, come back strong, and show that we can still remain a top team in NA.
I feel like it's the last of the old blood, like this series, us versus Tempo Storm. I feel like we're kind of the two teams going into this season that everyone was like, okay, Tempo Storm, Gale Force, we know they're going to be good. I mean, if you remember back in January, like everyone thought Freedom and Roll20 were both going to be trash, and look, and now they're at BlizzCon. Two teams that no one predicted to be really good, got the auto bids to BlizzCon, and now it's us and Tempo Storm who, you know, we're considered to be like 1 and 2, you know, are now battling over that third spot. I have a lot of respect for them as a team, but we haven't lost them with this roster once, so I don't think it's going to start today. I mean, our team has said BlizzCon is the goal since day one, and that's not January at the beginning of the season. That's last year when Fan was picked up on Gale Force, and I feel like it's kind of ironic that the team Denial, which was King Caffeine and K1 Pro, actually ended up going to BlizzCon over us. They took our spot over us at PAX East. Pretty interesting because like that team was formed, you know, like all we had talked about last year was BlizzCon, and we ended up falling short. And that was like that was probably the worst tournament I've ever had in my life, was PAX East. Like it really, I don't know, it really shook my whole mental philosophy on the game and like what it means to be a winner, right? Or like how to be a good player, because it's not like winning is very important, but it is very important to learn how to lose. And that's something that I feel like kind of gets lost in sports in general. It's like I feel like real champions know how to lose. You know, because like it's easy to win. Like when you're winning, it's easy. Like everyone's having a good time, everyone's enjoying themselves. But like once you lose, and knowing how to rebound, I feel like that's really what separates people. And I feel like that's us this year. You know, we're rebounding. We're coming off, you know, a couple tough matches. We're coming off not achieving our goal and our dream last year, not going to BlizzCon last year, not being the whole reason that we were a team last year. And we're coming for it this year. When we made 2 amazing additions of King Calf and K1, who have that BlizzCon experience. They've won BlizzCon. They went to BlizzCon last year. They've gone to it the past 2 years. They don't want to miss a BlizzCon. This, you know, like this will be the first BlizzCon ever for Heroes of the Storm that King Cap will miss if we do losing. So there's a lot on the line for our team, and we're all, you know, it gets our blood boiling. It makes us all really excited. You know, it gets that fire. So but BlizzCon's what it's all about. I mean, everyone wants to sit up there on stage in front of a home crowd and just hear them chant your names.
BlizzCon is what it's all about. That's what this final best of 5 is all about. Michael Udo talked a lot about rebounding as a team, being able to come back together after a difficult loss, and both of these teams now have had to do that, and whoever can do it better, that's the team who's going to go today, Glaurung.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have asked for a better finale to this playoffs. I'm so hyped to be able to see the clash of like the old Titans. Like Michael illustrated in the interview pretty well. Both Tempo and GFE were the old powerhouses, and they still, like, I think, have moments where they shine bright, but I want to see like which team comes together and ends up making it work better.
Dreadnought, Tempo looked really good yesterday. Do you think that Gale Force is going to be able to keep up with them, having seen everything now that Tempo brought to the table versus Space Station?
I think the biggest advantage that Gale Force obviously has for the series is the fact they haven't shown anything, and that they're a team that does do well at preparing for only one series. They've been lucky enough to sit at the very top of the ladder and allow that to be the case. And so I do think that if they are successful, it is solely due to that amount of time and preparation that they have, because Tempo Storm looks scary. Their synergy is on point, and that hunger that you talked about is the biggest thing for me that goes, look out for Tempo Storm. It started yesterday, and they met my expectations perfectly.
Like I'm telling you, I haven't felt this vibe from Tempo in over like 6 months, it feels like.
I would say longer than that. For me, it's not until the second event that they played with June. I haven't felt like they've been that hungry. The first one, June came in, new blood, never proven himself. They walk up to the tournament. Their Murloc Genius is still trying to figure out. They get their sponsor. Second time, June moves up. They're feeling the pressure of expectation to win. They end up still performing and continue to do so for a long while. But that hunger dissipated very quickly for me. And to see that, I mean, there is nothing more terrifying than a team that wants it more than you.
Well, a very menacing Tempo Storm against the Old Guard, a terrifying, surprising team of Gale Force Esports. Let's get things going, starting with the cheers at hand. We're going to kick off first with, I believe, Tempo Storm. Nope, Gale Force Esports. We've got Rob Dog there, Gladman. I think that's a name you'll see on both of these here. Thank you so much, everyone, for cheering for your favorite teams. As we switch over now to Tempo Storm, Tarford continue to climb up there.
Yeah, we got, again, what is that? Cassaran? Oh, man. You know, this is actually exactly why I don't try and announce every one of your guys' names, because, in fact, just the ability to be able to get them accurately is just not right. I even struggled with Glaurung for the longest while. Still do. It's Glaurung, still don't know. Glaurung.
The world will never know. Except that Glaurung just told you yourself, so you're boned. You're boned. Let's get into it. The series is ready. Game 1 takes place on Sky Temple, chosen by Gale Force Esports. And
we've known each other for 3 years. Come on, Dred.
You were teammates.
I know.
We were teammates. Man.
I'm working on it. That's all I'm trying to say. You know, I'm just trying to show.
That's all I can ask for.
Thank you very much. You know, and we're here for each other.
Absolutely.
Sky Temple, though, for this draft.
But before we start with Sky Temple, we gotta even go back to the bans. You guys hypothesized that we had a Braxis holdout ban from Tempo Storm after they picked it yesterday to deny drafting data, and it looks like that indeed is what it was. Banned by
that
Tempo
makes me
Storm.
a happy camper. I'm so happy that prediction ended up playing out.
Nice job there. We've got Tassadar and Malthael bans for Gale Force.
This draft is going fast.
It is going fast.
Yeah, it is going very quickly here. So do we, well, immediately Tempo Storm locks in that Vala opportunity
Sticking
move.
to the trend.
Yeah, towards that kind of double support as we kind of hypothesized beginning with the playoffs here, and as we assumed these more effective double support teams are now highly prioritizing that here. With the response, though, is going to be Gale Force with an Abathur Greymane on a map like Sky.
I love when two teams who are confident that they're going to beat each other face each other in the draft, because you get just the fastest, spiciest drafts, because both teams have prepared and have a general idea of what the enemy team wants as well as what they want. And this draft, up until this phase, was lightning fast. And the Abathur Greymane pickup from GFE, it's kind of like a signature GFE staple at this point, securing the Abathur and picking something that goes with it.
Glau, I have to ask, do you ever use that as a way of kind of calling out your opponent when you go through these fast picks in the way that we just saw Tempo and Gale Force do?
When you very clearly have a plan that you're going with, like for example, there was a small period of time where my team, we would like trap people into leaving one pick open and we'd insta-lock it, and then it would sort of like potentially send a message for the rest of the set.
It does.
I don't know, there's some level of mind games that goes into it, but it's interesting when both teams do it. Yeah.
Well, next we've got Brightwing and ETC. Brightwing has been a focus definitely for Tempo Storm. I wondered who was going to get the first Vala, and we saw a lot of Vala play from Gale Force last time too, or in their last series of the league play. But getting ETC, that's got to feel really good for Fury and Tempo Storm. This has been a highly contested Warrior pick.
Yeah, potentially 2 globals locked in already from Tempo Storm's perspective. ETC, what's nice about him is he can still play that primary frontline role with the mosh pit, so it always is just something in the back of GFU's head. But having the potential for 2 globals against an Abathur is very nice. The Arthas ban threatens a potential Illidan pick, although I'm not the biggest fan of Illidan in the current meta. GFE has prioritized Illidan quite heavily in the past, and I wonder if that trend will continue.
Do you feel like that ban could indicate a little bit more of not so much that they wanted the Illidan, but more maybe trying to feign that they have interest towards it?
If anything, the Arthas ban from GFU's perspective is like, there's nothing in particular that we want to take away desperately. We want to react to your draft. So we're going to try and get you to match our play and waste a ban. So not saying that the Arthas ban is necessarily a waste, but like you said, it's a feint, and it could feign a particular strategy that Tempo Storm has to respect.
Yeah, I think that's got to be it, because I agree with you. You know, to commit to that Illidan in this type of meta, it is very risky, but to show that and be like, hey, Tempo Storm, are you considering getting that Illidan ban? We don't see that. Instead,
the
it's
Genji.
It's going to go with
and
that Genji.
honestly, like if they were to have banned the Illidan over the Genji, I feel like that would have been a big misplay, like GFE sneaking that Aba Genji through the draft. So overall, interesting play out so far. I like the Brightwing early prioritized because of the fact that the other support doesn't matter as much. Vala has a lot of good pairings. She can be paired with Oriole, you can pair her with Uther, Stukov, Medic. There's a lot of options still available to Tempo Storm, but they feel like the Brightwing is the most important aspect of their double support and not that other more sustained centric support.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. Brightwing brings so much to the table as a support, right?
Yeah.
With her hard crowd control and having the global in itself.
Armor, global,
she's very
good
different than
healing.
other supports. Yeah. And so it makes sense that they are going to see that level of priority. One thing, though, for Gale Force in the draft that they have so far, I'm already looking at how they're going to effectively get initiations and lockdown into what we're assuming is going to be that double support on the side of Tempo Storm. That was something that it seemed like Space Station Gaming continuously struggled with, and they decided it's a new Barak for that Cocoon and also a Sonya.
We saw a similar draft actually come out of Team Expert today on Braxis Holdout.
Yeah.
The Abathur Sonya is like quite good in the sense that Sonya has winning matchups in the solo lane, but she has incredibly winning matchups when it's a Sonya with a hat in the solo lane. So that could be something they're looking towards. And on Sky Temple, the middle bot control during the first Temple phase is extremely important, and Abathur gives you a big advantage there.
Final 2 picks for Tempo Storm, likely waiting on the other support.
I feel like it should be, it should be a tank who can be in the offlane, or another main tank so ETC can shift to the offlane post level 10, plus a sustain heavy support. From my perspective, I feel like Oriole might be the best choice against what GFE is currently showing, but I could see an argument being made for Stukov as well as a Medic theoretically. But a Nubarak with Sonya is pretty scary in the Medic.
Yeah, it is very scary. That dive potential and just the raw, damage output that they have so very quickly. 2 things that no Morales wants to deal with.
So ETC, they want to be their primary front line with this, and they end up going the Uther. I think that makes a lot of sense Anubarak and Sonya, a lot of their damage is front-loaded, same with Greymane. If you have the Uther to protect the Vala, then Brightwing can sort of compensate, get that sustain, get the armor you need to win that team fight.
And you still have the potential for a cleanse without having to go into it with Brightwing too, with Hand of Protection. Holy cow. Will be pretty terrifying around the boss points, but also the temple points. But now we're just waiting on support for Gale Force. What would you like to see Akaface play?
I also like, this is just a little bit of a side note, but still on the point of Akka, denying the Uther and the Brightwing away from an Abathur composition with a Greymane or a Sonya is really important because, first of all, Brightwing with the new armor additions is really good with a hyper carry, and Akaface has always loved Brightwing and shown a priority for that hero. But then also Uther would have been a great support for GFE, so I think Tempo took that to deny.
It automatically screams to me that they would want to be going with a Greymane and a Sonya and an Abathur composition. You want that Rhaegar for that burst heal, but again, he has, comparative to the rest of the support pool, not as highly incentivized. They end up going with it there, but I agree with you. Denying those two is a huge power play here for Tempo Storm.
Absolutely, and I'm going to keep my eye on Dahaka here. The way that the draft played out, the early ban on Malthael allowed a late pick Dahaka to potentially get a lot of value, and Isolation is incredibly strong against Rhaegar.
Does either one of these drafts immediately stand out as just a win to you here, considering Sky?
Yeah, Tempo Storm's draft, from my perspective, is much better. But Gale Force's comp, if Tempo Storm makes one error, Gale Force's comp could run away with it. I think that they're going to put a lot of emphasis on roaming together GFE and taking down structures and potentially looking for ganks where Tempo might not expect it.
Okay, okay. I do agree with you, though, with the safety of double support. I feel like across the board, double support kind of has that, the burden execution is always to the other side of the table. I'm just struggling at identifying, is Gale Force good enough to run this style of comp and execute against a very, you know, obviously dominant Tempo Storm after yesterday?
Difficult to say for sure. And one thing, too, that Tempo's comp has running for them, they have double global into an Abathur already on Sky Temple. So the amount of shenanigans they're going to be able to play on the map while still developing that global pressure is really, really good.
Well, something we haven't even talked about yet is that Gale Force Esports showed a role swap in the last series of League play. That's pretty risky to do right before playoffs, right?
It was the, are you talking about the K1 fan?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting to me because K1 is now back on ranged.
Yeah.
And I feel like K1 as a player throughout his history has always performed best when he's in a position to deal damage instead of help an ally.
Well, let's see how it works out for Gale Force if they continue with that. Thank you so much, Glowering. We're heading into Game 1 of our final playoffs match between Tempo Storm and Gale Force Esports.
And we kick it off with the blue side. It is Gale Force Esports. Abathur will be played by Michael Udall. We have Fan representing in the melee. It's that Sonya. King Caffeine on a new Barak. We have K1 Pro playing the Greymane. And Akaface is on Rhaegar.
And for Tempo Storm in the red, we have June playing Uther. Fury will be playing ETC. After that, Koth and Look back on Brightwing. We've got Psalm playing Vala, and finally, Caterpillar will be playing Dahaka. Tempo Storm versus Gale Force Esports, just like Glowering mentioned. It is a repeat of the grand finals of the first NA regional that ultimately meant that Tempo Storm got to go to BlizzCon, got to go to the finals there, the grand finals, and then Gale Force Esports had to try again, and then losing out and then forcing to play in the tiebreaker match versus Denial is what kept Gale Force from going there, so they really do not want to lose another match that would send them home.
It is a little bit different, though, with the fact that two of the members that ended up denying that are now conveniently on the same side.
That's true.
That is the two members from Denial who moved over to BSEP. That was K1 Pro and also King Caffeine. So it's just been a very, I mean, honestly, interesting storyline with all the transferring of rosters for Gale Force Esports. But as we know, the origin for each and every one of them has been the BlizzCon. And it is the main goal for these players. It would be absolutely devastating. I mean, it feels a little bit awkward even, you know, kind of like not having Dignitas at the Western Clash. It just feels, that's not what you're used to. To not have King Caffeine as the North American representative at BlizzCon, it's just, that doesn't happen.
Well, it does show the product of having this consistent competition, this consistent means of growth, of playing against maybe better skilled opponents that get you to that point. And that's why we're seeing teams like Team Freedom finally be able to break into the big leagues of being able to represent the region on a global stage. Team Expert, same thing. They have been playing for a year to get to this point, and today they qualify for HGC finals at BlizzCon.
It's one of those things that it feels like these teams that are, breaking into the big leagues, as time has gone on, they're starting to own the big leagues. Europe,
That's true.
Europe's at a point where they're a bit more sustained, where the old guard is still remaining at the very top. But other than that, North America, we have flipped right on over. New blood is hungry, and Tempo Storm has shown that hunger as of late. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I am afraid of what they can provide here in this series.
Yeah, they seemed pretty menacing yesterday playing versus Space Station. But Gale Force Esports are the best team to try to deal with that. Try to stop the fury of Tempo Storm. We've got the first Tempo phase activating. Tempo Storm got a lot of damage done in the top lane earlier on, and that's netted them the fort down with the first phase and a level lead at the start of game 1 on Sky.
Yeah, it's not surprising to see Tempo Storm pull ahead, though. We are facing an Abathur composition on the other side, so we can expect Tempo to pull ahead. But it's Abathur on Sky Temple, not some of his, better or, if you will, safer, more forgiving maps. So I am keeping an eye on how effective post 7, if we see him pick up the mule, how are they going to keep these structures alive? Because Tempo Storm already getting a fort with that first phase is a very big win structurally pre-7.
K1 Pro has specced into more of a Worgen focus with his Greymane, getting viciousness, which is not generally what we see. It's not the Wolf Heart, but it will help him make sure that he can keep Inner Beast up more longer when he does choose to activate it, because ability damage can refresh it, and it even gives an extra second of that. But Eyes in the Dark makes us think that likely we're going to be seeing him move into a Wizened Duelist. Getting Eyes in the Dark helps him disengage and make sure that he can protect those precious stacks once he starts getting them.
And you saw Gale Force Esports there was very comfortable taking the Night Camp, but never sending anybody to go pick it up until Abathur slimes his way on over. He will be able to restore that for them whenever they feel like they want it. But on the note of Eyes in the Dark, one thing to consider in this match specifically is it is so amazing against point-and-click hard crowd controls, which is both going to be that polymorph and also the Hammer of Justice there from Uther. So you can get very offensive disengage with this talent build that you can't otherwise. And the go for the throat value you can get by diving that backline and not afraid of a CC is astounding.
Well, 7 is here for Tempo Storm, still considering what Uther wants to get, Hand of Protection or Guardian of Ancient Kings. Gale Force Esports are just on the cusp of getting 7-2. Do we get a Mule for Abathur? Yes, Mule will be picked up. This is going to try to help Gale Force Esports catch up, deny some of the easy experience for Tempo Storm from the temples so that they can start to catch back up in more and more in experience, and then even start to get a structural lead in the later game.
So Gale Force over in the next Shrine phase, which is going to spawn here up in the next 20 seconds. I have to answer a question. Is it okay to risk this Shrine phase here with an Abathur composition or respond elsewhere on the map? They decide that they're going to push up on top, not paying attention to the bottom Shrine, almost netting a kill there onto Cattle. Tempo now looking to get that response. ETC is going to start the Shrine, so this up here is going to be a 4.5 versus 5.
Yeah, the early burrow, or the early essence usage of Cattle, and then the burrow from that 2 kept him alive, caught him like phase shifted in. Tempo all responding appropriately once they realized how much of Gale Force's Esports' resources were focused in this top lane. Now they have ETC continuing to work on Temple, but he is being cautious and making sure that he doesn't get caught unawares with so much of the team of Tempo Storm in the top.
It's going to be very important that Gale Force Esports just doesn't lose too much during this window of the Shrine up on bottom and then this pressure they're applying up towards top. Because of that Abathur, they are okay with taking a bit of damage, but not losing entire major structures. And then as long as they're even in the experience, this is still very impressive performance so far here for me from Gale Force Esports for an Abathur comp on Sky. They just need to tread lightly because Tempo now is very, very close to those heroics.
The final shots have been fired in the bottom, and it doesn't take out the fort from Gale Force. So now Tempo Storm have some tough choices. Mule is a possibility to heal that back up, and that would be a lot of the work of Tempo undone. But Tempo are just about to get 10. They're still making sure that they can stave off aggression in the top lane, so they're not committing immediately anybody down to that bottom lane besides ETC. So it is starting to heal back up.
Tempo Storm now achieving their heroics. It is going to continue to be the Emerald Wind out of Brightwing, a major boss control that we'll have to keep our eyes on. Fury does sniff this out. Nobody knows he is there up until now. Brightwing gets the teleport. Tempo's going to take this camp. There's a drag right onto Rhaegar. Polymorph immediately after, and this looks like Tempo Storm with the body blocks is going to take themselves a first blood.
First blood and the first boss, the way that they're positioning. We've got King Caffeine keeping an eye on this. Rhaegar will be back in 14 seconds, but there's still no heroic abilities, and without Rhaegar, you're missing your primary support. This isn't a double support comp that maybe they could hang with. The best is to look and see if anybody's taking a lot of damage and try to assassinate them, but not seeing that. Dahaka staying healthy, using the essence, the healing of the double support. Tempo will claim the boss.
Tempo will claim the boss and siege up on bottom with that Giants that they already have after that bottom altar that we saw up on bottom. We were asking how much value is this mule going to get. Tempo achieved the first fort during the first shrine phase. They are going to achieve the second fort during the second shrine phase. This is worst case scenario when you have an Abathur composition with mule. Gale Force definitely wanted to kind of stop that pressure a bit better than they had done for the first 6 minutes of this game. But after backdooring the mid fort, at least it's not too out of control.
Yeah, some cool moves there from Gale Force to use the clone just to take that out. Utilizing how much damage a Greymane, and especially a Greymane clone, can do with the extra bit of attack damage. Tempo Storm are continuing to push along with the boss. They do have that great disengage from ETC, and then they have the strong front line of that, even an Emerald win if they really need. So they feel like even though this is an earlier boss, and it is the death bridge they have to leave after, they have the tools necessary if they need to disengage.
Amazing cleanse there from Akaface, kept Fan alive, but as these two shrines are up, to Gale Force Esports, they have to fight before the 13 talent tier is here. It looks like they're comfortable taking the slower, more passive play, but I feel like they're banking a bit too much onto the late game with their composition, considering how far behind they already are structurally. The only way I see this type of strategy working out in the long run is if they take that failure to focus on keeping their forts alive and put all their energy towards keeping their keeps alive with that mule, and that just seems unrealistic to be able to rely on against a team like Tempo Storm.
Yeah, Tempo has shown that they are willing to get aggressive when they need to bring down those structures, and especially if they maintain the kind of lead that they have accrued in this game. 13-12. Tempo Storm holding on to both of the shrines because Haka is in the bottom and he can rotate to the mid if Gale Force were willing to fight. But without 13, Gale Force aren't willing to do that.
Gale Force Esports camp up on top might be able to take out the top fort for them, and that is about as good as this is going to get over the next couple of minutes. The next major fight is potentially over the boss. I don't think that Tempo Storm necessarily needs to force it, but it would be in their best interest purely based on the experience advantage. It should be rounding around that 16 talent tier, and if you can lock in that fort with the boss against a mule composition, that is the dream on Sky.
Well, once again, Gale Force are assembling to do some structural damage to Tempo Storm. This time in the bottom lane, they bring down the towers and the gate, knowing that it was likely that a lot of members of Tempo Storm were in the top getting the bruisers, and upon seeing that, they do start to move back, knowing that the rotation will start to come in. So they don't get much more than taking out a well, but wells are always nice. They get some experience from the towers and knowing that they can maybe limit some of the re-engage potential over future temple phases.
We're still yet to see the 13 talent tier picked up for well, I mean, now we see it picked up. I was wondering if there was any justification for something else, maybe a split push focus going into those locusts at 13 and 16. Still focusing on that team fight, so you can expect a very terrifying Sonya or Greymane if they get that hat with that heal post 13. But the biggest thing here, Gilly, is they have to force a fight for those talents to even matter. Gale Force has just been so all over responsive to that of Tempo Storm that I just don't see a window where they're going to get these type of skirmishes again.
Yeah, Tempo's not going to give them a fight when they're on the same talent tier, unless Gale Force just says, come and fight us. And even, yeah, Tempo Storm went to the bottom lane when Gale Force were pushing there, but they also weren't like overly aggressive toward them. They were just like, hey, you can't take this fort, but you also can't get in a full fight versus us. It's Gale Force who's going to have to get onto the other side of the battleground if they even want a chance of a fight. And then otherwise, they will have to wait until they're at 16. And so it's looking more and more like they're just willing to do that, which means they're going to have to make sure they're out in the lanes, starting to catch up in experience, and that's what they're doing. But we've got another temple activating. At least it's only one temple this time.
Yeah, it is convenient that they see themselves with only one temple to answer to for Tempo Storm, and the top front wall does still exist for Gale Force, so this isn't a keep by any means, but it's about half health onto that top keep.
Right.
Tempo will have the 16 advantage, so other than this boss dance that Gale Force can kind of throw around here to bully the transition to the Tempo Storm, they're very conveniently going to be able to pressure that top keep with the 16. And if they fail to do so, though, maybe Gale Force can get that mule. That's what they're hoping for. Again, I just don't assume Tempo Storm to let them have these type of plays.
Yeah, in 30 seconds, the boss will be up, and Gale Force have a good setup around it. They even have a lot of nests there from Abathur, but still part of the issue is that the global advantage is to Tempo Storm. This a fast power slide in, 3-man mosh pit. June comes in, Dahaka's ready to stock, and Tempo Storm is ready to take this fight.
That Emerald Wind pushes all of Gale Force back into the base of Tempo Storm. Cocoon reveals going to be there in a second. 3-man knockout from King Caffeine as Mike Udall gets the chase there with that clone. A new Barak now seems to be the focus for Tempo Storm as they're constantly getting that body blocks. King Caffeine shadow charges out, and no kills for either side here. A lot of heroics, a lot of flash and fireworks here, Gilly, but no kills gained.
Yeah, Gale Force very clearly were trying to take advantage of the fact that having a global, likely Dahaka in the top temple, Tempo Storm would be making a rotation somewhere else around that point. And they did catch Psalm, but Fury's quick reactions and then the way that the whole team got in and were able to save Psalm now is pushing Gale Force even further behind. Gale Force rotate up knowing that the boss is going to be claimed by Tempo Storm. Now that they were all there, they do get the boss, so at least the final few shots from Gale Force take out that final fort for Tempo Storm. So they're at 16, they're only a level behind, and now they have some time to get into another fight.
Can Gale Force here get the fight that they want past this boss? Calf, you see getting flanked around, but he's already sniffed out by Tempo Storm. The boss moves up, breaking onto the keep here. Psalm able to dodge the nice spear coming out from Fan. Power slide onto the backline. Cleanse already forced onto King Caffeine. K1 Pro's trying to get the flank. Emerald Wind.
Emerald Wind separating all of Gale Force away from each other, but it's K1 Pro who's way in the back. Anubarak already down as he drops the cocoon, making sure that they can work on that and get him back out. Tempo Storm sticking together, power sliding in, bringing down Rhaegar. That's a second kill as the keep falls.
41 seconds for two members of Gale Force to be back online. The boss is low, but Tempo Storm doesn't look like they care. They are ready to end this game. Abathur Hat goes on to Fan. The shielding on the core is gone.
It's still falling 90%. No one else here besides Sonya and Greymane. Great damage dealers. They do have Abathur and a Mule, but it just looks to not be enough at all. As long as Psalm can stay alive, still having the Divine Shield, Fury will drop the Mosh just to make sure those damage dealers can't put the damage in to take down Psalm. Tempo Storm secures game 1.
Tempo Storm takes game 1 in 13 minutes. Not necessarily the kind of death match we normally expect from these teams, but there was only 3 kills throughout the entirety of it, all of them going over to Tempo Storm, but it seemed very in control of Tempo Storm from beginning to end.
Super clean and concise. They recognized that Gale Force had an Abathur Greymane style composition. They knew exactly what they needed to do to prevent the split push trading, to just slowly develop an advantage, and then once they have that advantage, they have that amoeba-centric stay together team comp. And like when we go into this replay, we can actually illustrate that. Psalm plays this really well. If you watch his individual mechanics here, he dodges Sonya Spear twice. He dodged it once prior to this, and actually he just gets the perfect peel and support. But you can see him in the middle of 4 other people just constantly bobbing and weaving in and out, receiving that protection from his supports. And it's this sort of team cohesion and chemistry that really makes Tempo Storm look scary.
Yeah, more incredible plays from Fury, I felt, this game. The way he was able to save Psalm, quick response times to do that. Psalm played very well on the Vala, which is great to see considering that he hasn't traditionally been the Vala player for the team.
I mean, even from yesterday to today, one of my biggest criticisms of Psalm as a player is inconsistency, and I think that he didn't have the most stellar performance overall on Vala yesterday versus SSG. Considering the 3-0, he obviously did play well enough to win, but when I directly compare the way he played in this game today versus how he played yesterday, it's incredible how well he played on Vala that game.
Yeah, nobody could get on him.
The guy that stands out for me without that entire performance is still Fury. Yesterday, Fury was absolutely amazing, but I want to highlight that moment where he was willing to mosh pit to save on top of the 3-man beyond the success of the mosh pit, right? June was there. That was kind of a miracle in the fact that they had the perfect storm to set up a Divine Shield mosh, but he was willing to use debatably one of the longest cooldowns in the entire game just to save one target, understanding this is the only way this game gets out of control, is this right here. So he used everything he could to stop that moment. And granted, they were able to turn, but even using that and it just saving Fala for half a second would have been worth, and that game sense means a lot. Like, very few players, I feel like, display that consistently, and he's doing that here today.
I feel like Fury's on top of his game in a way that we know that he's been a consistent, warrior player before, but I feel like he's just at the top of his game, and that makes me